or while you guys get that up?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think everybody's on. Okay, we're live. We're live, Kevin, so they can do that at whenever I get the meeting going. So, okay. Folks, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to start with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land to which we are gathered as the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, Selous, and Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda unless there is a late item. Councillor Woodward.
I do have a late item for the end of the meeting.
So you want to put, okay. Pardon?
Council needs to vote on
Yep.
the late item.
Okay, so, yeah, so we need to know what the content is then, right? So Councillor Woodward, you're putting forward a motion to have a late item that includes?
This is regarding the Help Cities Lead campaign.
Okay.
And a vote on whether or not City of Nelson will be part of that campaign.
Okay, so you need council permission to get that on the table as a late item, and that
right.
Should, yeah.
Can I just ask what the timing of that is?
There's not like a time crunch. It's just like many things. It's writing a support letter. So similar in the sense of the 100% renewables or other initiatives we've been involved in. I did send it around and I shared it with council.
Okay.
And is there an expectation that we roll this into Nelson next? I'm not sure of the linkage.
Rick, do you want to comment on it?
Yeah, if it's okay. I have some.
So we need a mover. We got a mover, and we need a seconder.
Okay.
If it's going on.
I'll second it.
Rick second. Okay. Okay, so it's going on the agenda. We'll have the discussion when it comes up. It'll be 9.
I think we still need to vote on it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not time for discussion.
No,
it'll go on as 9B if council's approval, if council gets approval for that. So we're going to ask for a vote. All in favor?
I did want to speak to it for a second on it being on the agenda.
Okay, go ahead.
So I mentioned this to Councillor Woodward, and I think we were already touching on it in Cormac. I'm okay with having a discussion about this. I don't think it warrants a late item. I would honestly think we just take it as a notice and have it at the next business meeting, because I don't think it's time sensitive. So just in respect for that, and so we can contemplate what's being asked of us, we can just have it at the next meeting.
That's a fair.
That would be my preference.
Yep.
That would be my preference.
That's fine. I did want staff and council to take a look at it.
Okay.
To consider it. So
we've got the notice now.
So all in
okay.
favor of
Wait a sec. Sorry. Point of order.
Okay. Go ahead.
Do we have? So are we changing this to be a notice of motion?
That'd be the preference.
I
think, yeah. That gives staff time to look at it, prepare a report, bring it back to us, show us how it all fits, and then we can decide at that point.
Sounds good.
Or even
that's reasonable. So,
or even not have it as a notice of motion if you let us have a chance to have a look at it and have a chat with you and see how it fits.
Okay. I did send out an email with the information, and I think it would be good to look at, the city and council take a look at and consider.
Okay. Thanks. So
thank you.
We're dropping the mover and seconder piece, and we're just going to leave it in your hands, Jesse, to sit down with Kevin and go over it. And if it warrants to be on the next agenda, that's where we'll put it on. Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, onward and upward. Adoption of the agenda as presented to you. Did we have a mover and a seconder for that? Nothing. Okay, we need Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Okay. Questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, I have 4 councillors up there. I don't know where Councillor Renwick went. There he is. There
He's
he is.
back.
Okay, that's passed. Okay. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting of April the 13th, 2021. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Renwick. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate at this time for our staff to introduce themselves? And Christy's brand new. I don't think anybody's met her. And Nicole, I'm not sure if you met any of our planners or Director of Public Works. Okay.
Sounds
Would
good.
it be okay?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Colin, Innes, do you want to give a quick introduction and let Nicole know what your role is here? And
Absolutely. Good evening, Councillor Charwood. My name is Colin Innes. I'm the Director of Public Works and Utilities here for the city. I don't get to a whole lot of these meetings, but thankfully got some time here on the agenda to take care of a couple issues. So nice to meet you and look forward to working with you in the future.
Nice to meet you, Colin. Thanks.
Thanks, Colin.
Pam? Pam, are you able to jump on?
Yes.
If not,
Is that working?
uh,
Is it not working?
uh,
Okay.
There you
How's
are.
that? Oh, good. Hello, Councillor Charlwood. My name is Pam Moreau, and I'm the Director of Development Services.
And the rest of these staff are
Hi, Pam.
Pam's. Natalie? So you'll see generally your planning staff a fair amount at council meetings.
Hello, my name's Natalie Underdanczyk, and I'm a senior planner here at the city. I wonder if we work together a little bit with the Eco Society. Yes, yeah. Well,
We
welcome.
did, yes. Hi again.
Okay, great. Hi.
And Christy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Christy McConnell. I joined the planning team just over 3 weeks ago, so brand new. And yeah, excited to meet you all and to work with you all in the future.
Yeah. Welcome,
Chris-
Hi,
Christy.
Christy.
Christy, are you from Caslow originally?
I am indeed from Caslow, yes.
Did you go to school there?
I did, yeah. So I
Was,
think I know your niece.
Yeah, was Andy Leetfoot, was he one of your teachers there?
He was the principal when I was in high school.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right, onward and upward. So the first, let me get my computer back up and running here. First item on the agenda is coming up. So there we go. 10th Street. Okay, a development variance permit application or 902 10th Street. Development Services has received a development variance permit application for 902 10th Street to reduce the minimum rear lot line required by zoning bylaw from 4.5 meters to 2.2 meters for the purpose of constructing a garage addition to the second story covered deck. And once again, thanks Pam for you and your staff for preparing a very comprehensive report for us. And there is a recommendation and a full report in front of council. And if somebody is willing to move the recommendation, and there are options and alternatives, of course, anytime. Councillor Woodward moved. Councillor Renwick second. Any questions or comments? Councillor Page.
I'm just the most critical person, I guess. I'm going to vote against this. I'm just saying that now. Based on what I've already seen, this encroachment is. I know we want to treat the Fell Street as the front of the yard, given the shortness of the line, but this is a corner lot. This is. We had some debate on the last development approvals we had at our last meeting about how permeable surfaces turn into covered areas, turn into walled covered areas, turn into an addition at the basically a natural front yard of this property that is now going to be a second garage with a covered deck right by right by this college there. I just think it doesn't fit. I don't think there's a compelling reason why we're compromising the lot setback in this case. I think our town is known for its quaint, cute family homes, and I don't think this adds housing, and I don't think it makes the lot more attractive to the rest of the streetscape. I think it encroaches too much. So, and I almost think they could stay out of the setback and still end up with a garage if they really wanted to. So I don't see a compelling reason why we would let this. So I'm voting against it.
Okay. Any further questions? So,
Natalie, do you want to speak to why we recommended this?
Sure, if council, yes, absolutely. I think one of the reasons that staff recommended it, it's just a small portion of the building that's actually extending into what we would call the rear setback. And the other thing I just wanted to kind of highlight is that it is the interior side setback for the adjacent property. So it sort of seemed almost fair that they all get to build to the 1.5 meter setback. I can understand that this is a corner lot and the house is kind of oriented in sort of a strange fashion, kind of facing upwards towards the intersection. And so it's just kind of an existing condition. I do feel that the impact would be minimal on the neighborhood, and the adjacent neighbor did not have any concerns, and so that's why staff supported it. They're also kind of using an existing cement pad, so I think if they had to re-angle it to meet the setback, I think it would kind of be odd in the end, but that's up to council. So
thanks, Natalie.
did I cut out there?
Okay, good.
Thank you. Councillor Lockenberg.
Natalie, I just wanted you to clarify for me. You're saying that there's going to be no additional loss of permeable surface with this versus what they would do otherwise?
There's an existing cement pad that they're going to build on top of. I think you can kind of see it in the photo that I attached at the very last page. So there'll be no additional loss of permeable surfaces. That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
And on that one graphic there, you can see there's just a small piece of it that protrudes beyond the existing lot. So,
and if you haven't ever been to this lot, I mean, if they're going to put a nice deck out there, they're going to actually, I mean, and good for them, have a lovely view of the lake because of the orientation of their house. They face south. And so this way they're going to have some western exposure. So I drive by this house at least once a day going up to see my clients at Mountain Lakes.
okay, so the recommendation then is that the application for the development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 for the purpose of building a garage addition with a second story covered deck be approved for lot 1, district lot 97, Kootenai district plan 13549, 902 10th Street as per attached plans. Zoning bylaw number 3199/2013, section 417, schedule A, to reduce the rear lot line setback from 4.5 meters to 2.2 meters as per attached plans be approved. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item, this is for 1023 Observatory Street. Development Service has received a development variance permit application for 1023 Observatory Street to reduce the minimum exterior side lot line setback required by the zoning bylaw for 1.5 meters to 0 meters. Council is being requested to approve this variance. And there is a recommendation in front of council, and you have three options other than the one that's in front of you. Thanks again for a good package. We have a mover, Councillor Lockenberg, Councillor Charwood. Seconded. Okay, any questions or comments? We have a full contingent of people here to answer them. Hearing none. Okay, the recommendation is that the application for the development variance permit to vary the required zoning bylaw 3199 2013 for the purpose of building a replacement carport be approved for lot 7, block 118, block 18, plan NEP 486, district lot 182, land district 26, 1023 Observatory Street, as per attached plan, as excuse me, as follows. Zoning bylaw number 3199 2013 417 Schedule A to vary the minimum exterior side lot line from 1.5 to 0 meters. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Fees and charges bylaw. Fees and charges amendment for field use bylaw.
I think.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Mayor, I think there's one more item there.
Oh yes, Highway 3. Yeah, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Development
No
variance
problem.
permit for 758 Highway 3A. And Development Services received a development variance application for 758 Highway 3A to increase the maximum height of the above garage suite in laneway house required by the zoning bylaw from 6.1 meters to 6.7 meters, and council's request to approve that variance. And once again, there's a very comprehensive package in front of council, and there is a staff recommendation, and there's also options and alternatives. We need a mover for the recommendation. Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Thank you. Any questions or comments from either the mover or seconder? Hearing none, Councillor Morrison. And then Councillor Lachtenberg.
So, I'm just through the chair to staff. This development and piece of land has been before, at least before me, I want to say 4 times over the last few years, maybe more, in terms of the lot, the division, some other variances and whatever, and this is another house I've driven by, or area I've been driven by quite a bit lately in my work in the community, and I'm just wondering if there was any contemplation at all to them just setting it back just a little bit that was discussed in the letter that we got from the one proponent that was against it. And is there anything more that they can add to this land that they're going to come back again for? It's just like, it just comes and there's always a little tweak and a little thing that's going on for this. I mean, it's lovely what they've built there, and it's nice to see this land actually be utilized. I'm not against that whatsoever, but yeah, it kind of seems to be amorphous. Like it shifts every time they want to put a new building on there, and I imagine it might have something to do with the access as well off the highway. But yeah, any more detail that you can enlighten me with would be great.
So Janice, it's a height request here, right?
Request, but if you read the letter from they just wanted to know whether or not it could be. They had concerns about the shadow cast and other things,
Oh, yeah, okay.
and they said one of the options there was, could they build it, 2 more feet back, which I imagine changes the shadow cast considerably. Just a question.
Natalie, go ahead.
Okay, through the chair, I think we got a lot of questions there, but I'll focus on the last one maybe, and if you want any clarification, please let me know. I worked both with the adjacent neighbor who submitted the letter as well as the applicant on this property. They actually are a new owner of this property. They weren't part of the other variances. But, I think they're feeling that they cannot accommodate any other requests made by the adjacent neighbor. At least that's my understanding from their discussion. And instead, what they did several modifications to the stairs, so they screen them so that the residents, you know, see them coming and going. And, you know, I think that they've done, been in communication now for several months trying to accommodate them. I think ideally the adjacent neighbors, I believe it's at 778 Highway 3A, they were hoping that the entrance could actually be moved away from their property, but in conversations with the applicant, it just does not work with their design anymore. And I think they're too far down moving forward with this design to make that kind of big modification. So to answer your question, I don't think it's possible with this current design to be able to do that.
So I went and looked at this site myself. I went and looked at all of them actually. And the one thing that struck me was the distance the neighbors are actually from the house itself when it's finally constructed was, in my opinion, fairly considerable, considering where I am to my next door neighbor as an example in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And the variance that was being requested was, it's a minimal height adjustment really at the end of the day. So, however, if there's another question there, Councillor Page, I think you had your hand up, and Councillor Lochtenberg was before you.
Yeah.
I have
Go ahead.
I had a quick one and then a supplemental. If I'm not correct, this used to all be one lot, right? And it's been subdivided by the people who are actually wanting some additional accommodations and then sold to this new proponent. Is that the chain of custody? Yeah. Okay. I see you saw nodding heads. My only comment, I'm in support of this. I think they're asking to build something that's well within their right. I think they've made some accommodations for sure, and they're not certainly filling the entire envelope that they could be filling. So I think there's some compromise happening there that's adequate. The only point I really wanted to flag for council and for the public is, and Natalie, I touched on this over email, was there's quite an extensive, and I don't want to pin anyone with greenwashing, but a lot of like, I'm going to do step code 5. It might have solar panels. To kind of say this is a good project. I think it's a good project because it fits within all of our current planning and policy. The step code 5 can be a very big red herring if people end up using a bunch of foam products and embedded carbon products trying to chase that last 5 or 15% of efficiency. And so when we're looking at these applications and when proponents are coming forward and thinking, you know, I'm really being energy efficient, I really challenge, especially a highly technical person like the proponent who's chasing after these specifications, to look at the materials they're using and look at the total life cycle of the carbon for these buildings. Because if it ends up being styrofoam and concrete to get that final seal, that you'll never get over the carbon debt of that building in the energy savings. So it was a little greenwashy for me trying to sell the whole thing, but I think at the end of the day, he's building well within his rights, and I think we should support that. So,
and everybody knows we are doing that study around building materials. So that will be coming to you down the road.
Councillor Lochtenberg.
Yeah, I didn't pick up where in the staff report there was a mention of building materials. Did I miss that? I didn't.
It was the letters from the proponents.
Yeah. I don't think it's
Sorry, what was that?
So, hold on.
It was mentioned in the report, or?
Councillor Lochtenberg, just a second. Before we go down that road, we're not here to talk about the product that's being used for this home. We're here to talk about a variance request. If we want to have a discussion at some other time about what the guy's using for 2x4s or 2x6s, that's altogether different conversation. So if we could stick to the request.
I agree.
The request that's on the table, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was. I thought, oh my God, I missed something. In my reading. No, a couple of things that jumped out on this one for me. Number one is, it's not step 5, Natalie, that I understand. Step 5 would be that it is net zero, but if the solar panels are in the future, then it's step 4, isn't it? Just clarification there, meaning that it's net zero ready. It's not actually net zero.
It's kind of interesting. It's net zero ready, so they just have to be ready to accommodate solar panels is my understanding. But again, I'm not the building inspector.
Okay.
These buildings will be built to step 5 in the building code, and they do have an energy compliance report with their building permit applications already. So I'm pretty confident that they are going to reach that.
Okay, that's good. Well, in general, I think as much as I'm very concerned about the embodied carbon component and the lack of emissions in the step code, as Councillor Page is mentioning, I do think the any initiative to progress is something that we should give extra attention to and extra consideration in these variances. Having said that, I do recognize that the neighbor is they have a valid concern. It's obviously, whenever we're granting a variance, we need to give extra consideration to the neighbors in terms of the impacts that are going to have on them. And but like the mayor said, when I looked at this, I obviously the math, I didn't do the geometry as on the shading and stuff like that, but it did look pretty reasonable. So my general rule is to go with the staff recommendations on this, and I don't see a reason not to. I think you've done a good job and a good rationalizing of why this should be approved. But in the future, though, I would say we should encourage, as Councillor Page is mentioning, and that Kevin is saying, really look at the embodied carbon components before. If you're trying to make a case, definitely include that in your case. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, back to the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Onward and upward. Fees and charges amendment. The City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Field Use Bylaw 3527/2021 is introduced and presented for first of 3 readings. The purpose of this amendment bylaw is to update the city fees and charges for the use of city fields as detailed in Schedule D and Fees and Charges Bylaw. And this is the first of 3 readings. There's a staff recommendation, and there are options and alternatives if you wish to have one. Councillor Page, are you moving the recommendation? Second, Councillor Charlwood. Okay, are there questions or comments? Okay, what's being moved here is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Field Use Bylaw number 3527/2021 be introduced and read a first time and a second time by title only. Councillor Morrison's got a question.
Yeah, I do, and that it's my apologies. It's probably a little bit off topic, but I do want to know. So I like that this is all tightened up and that we've worked with the regional district for their scheduling, whatever. But I'm surprised that Councillor Page hasn't brought up the issue that at our last rec meeting, we did have a letter from quite a long letter from soccer regarding looking at reductions in field costs, etc., given their losses. It was quite a well-written document showing their losses and their kids and their adults and all of the soccer that they coordinate due to COVID. And I mean, it was at that table, but it really belonged at the city council table because we're the ones that set the fees and charges. So if we set this and say we were to decide to give them a break, do we have to keep coming back and redoing this? So I guess this is to staff, redoing this schedule, or can we make, could we, if it was $100 and could we just pass something and say, well, it's $90 for 2020 without diving back into this document again to have all these readings?
I think you probably have 2 options. One, we could keep our department whole and use COVID relief funding to allow them to pay the full fees. So we haven't talked about that, but that might be the best option. And the second one, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can just do it by resolution to, change the amount for this year. You don't have to change the bylaw.
No, actually, Kevin, it does need to be by bylaw to make any changes to fees. But if it was just for
Yeah.
2021 and it was in relation to COVID, we can do all 4 readings in one go. If we wanted to amend, again, the schedule, just to put in a date around fees for 2021 only.
Yeah, so we haven't seen that request, so.
I'm
not
gonna
sure.
jump.
But they send that to us?
Yeah, so let me jump in there. I didn't bring it up here because I didn't see, and maybe I'm missing something, Director Morrison, but I didn't see here that the leasing of that building was inside of this fee schedule. Because I think that's really what their letter spoke to, and I think they're on the same.
Indoor?
No, my understanding from reading the letter, Keith, was that their field costs were a considerable thing because they know full well that the lease is through the city. It was the charges for their field rentals.
Okay. They have been given a letter from the table just directing them, as we did with Glacier, to reach out to the city to look for relief on those. But I think Morrison is picking up something that I've overlooked, and so maybe we do need to have that discussion here.
Yeah, we haven't,
Okay.
Staff hasn't seen that letter at all.
No, so I just wanted to bring it up. So I'm sort of thinking we're not doing 4 readings tonight. So I mean, it's just something to keep on the. I just wanted to know what the process was.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go ahead, ask these. We'll wait until we see it come to us, and then we'll address it at that time. I just want to know what the process was.
Thank you.
If we wanted to change them.
Thank you. So we can do that. Yeah, we can do 3 readings tonight. Okay. All right. So the first one is the Corporation of City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 3527/2021 be introduced and read a first time and a second time by title only. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And number 2, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Field Use Bylaw number 3527/2021 be read a third time by title only. All in favor? Do we need for both of them? Okay, sorry. Sarah's just letting me know we need a mover and a seconder for each individual one. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Page. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much. You gotta be careful. It's like being in an auction here. You gotta be careful you don't scratch your head at the wrong time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Curb cut fees charges. The current road maintenance curb cut policy is inconsistent with the off-street parking and landscape bylaw and subdivision development servicing bylaw. It therefore requires amending the fees and charges bylaw amendment curb cut fee number 3528/2021 is also being presented to allow for an application processing fees and charges. And there is a recommendation, and there's 1, 2, 3 in front of us, and there's options and alternatives as well. So, Councillor Woodward, are you moving that the road maintenance curb cut policy number 5400050005 be adopted as amended? Yes, and seconded by Councillor Renwick. Questions or comments? Nicole, and then Cal.
So I guess just a question for staff. If we're no longer going to be providing the service for free, is it a service we want to continue to offer?
Councillor Charlwood, I think it is still a service that it is valuable for us to offer. I do recognize that some folks may want to get one done quicker than we're able to respond to it just because of all the servicing requests and things we have. So we have built a provision into this to be able to have somebody go with a private contractor to do this work. However, I still think that for some folks, they may desire that the city does it. So I think it is something that we could offer up. It's just, however, a lower priority for us as compared to other concrete work, since we're providing access to a private property as opposed to doing, let's say, something like a concrete letdown at at a corner for people with mobility issues or those kind of things. But I do think that as part of the balance of people being able to get this done, that still having the city as an option is a good thing.
Yeah, so Colin, just a little bit of clarification on that. Even if it was done by the owner of the property or the contractor, that still have to come to the city to meet our requirements, right?
That's correct, Your Worship. They would still have to follow the procedure that's outlined in the document, and there's a curb cut application form that has to be filled out, submitted, and approved. The nice thing about the new application document that we've put together is it brings together a lot of the things out of those other bylaws and kind of pulls them all into one place to make it a little easier for folks in order to be able to get one of these done and not being chased off into reading, several different bylaws. It kind of pulls it all together nicely.
Good. Thank you. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Next, Councillor Renwick.
Thank you. Colin, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through here trying to look. Did I see in here somewhere where it's an additional charge if it's a commercial enterprise that wants the curb cut?
For a commercial, I know what you're referring to, or I believe I know what you're referring to. In the original bylaw, it spoke to that the city would provide a curb cut to a private residence, but that for a commercial residence that there was going to be a fee associated with it. And what we're putting forward here is that a fee be charged for all of it, and that the city is not providing a complimentary curb cut for a private property.
Okay, so residential or commercial, you have to pay.
That's correct. That's what we're putting forward.
And same, it doesn't. Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's what I need clarified. Thank you, Colin.
You're welcome.
And we don't go to Queens Bay, by the way. Next. Okay, all in favor. So we're on number one, the road maintenance curb policy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the next one is the Corporation of the City. I need a mover and a seconder for these. Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Curb Cut Fee. Bylaw number 3528/2021 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Page. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And last but not least, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Curb Cut Bylaw number 3528/2021 be read a third time by title only. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Charwood, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Next up is the 5 Mile Creek, Anderson Creek, Selous Creek Source Protection Plan. Staff are proposing the council approve of 5 Mile Creek, Anderson Creek, and Selous Creek Source Protection Plan as part of a multi-barrier approach to our drinking water protection. And again, thank you very much, Colin. Would this come out of your department, I imagine?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for your excellent report. And there is a recommendation, of course, for that. And there's also options and alternatives, but I'm not sure what they'd be. So we would need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation or not. Moved by Councillor Page, second by Councillor Lochtenberg. Questions?
And Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I think it might be appropriate for Colin to give a bit of an overview. This is a big item for us.
Get there in a second.
Okay.
Is there any questions from council or comments? Okay. All right, so we'll start with Councillor Lochtenberg and then we'll go to Councillor Charwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be interested in saving my question until, if Colin's going to present, I'd be okay to wait until after he presents because he might answer them in that presentation.
Go ahead,
Sure, absolutely. Well, I guess for members of council, part of our our operating permit has requested that we provide a source protection plan. And what that is intended to do is to help the city better understand our watersheds and the kinds of things that could impact water quality, water and water quantity supply within our watersheds. And so this was a process that got started in 2019 and went through into 2020. There was a technical committee that got put together that involved a variety of stakeholders, which include, of course, the City of Nelson, the Interior Health Authority, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources, the Regional District of Central Kootenay. It also included Anderson Creek Timber, Klesnikoff Lumber, as well as the cycling, Nelson Cycling Club for people that recreate within the watershed. So really what the work was doing was to take a look at the kinds of activities that go on in the watershed, as well as the nature of the watershed, which includes everything from the geology of it, the risk of landslides, the kind of turbidity that could be predicted from various events, and took a look at how climate change winds up affecting things in the future, as well as the impact of fire on the watershed. So I guess my big takeaways from this are that most of the impacts that would occur to our watershed are things that would be due to wildfire, flooding, or drought, and less due to I guess human activity as far as being out in the watershed and recreating in the watershed. That being said, of course, wildfire, flooding, and drought are going to be made more of an issue due to climate change. And of course, I think that with human activity, that definitely pertains to us there as well, just maybe not directly in the watershed as a person doing their activity. So from this, there's a number of mitigative measures that are provided, and I believe that's starts on page 34 of the report, and it walks through a bunch of the actions there. Really, what I think a big value of this, though, is that our watershed is on property that's not owned or controlled by the city. And really, by having this plan and by engaging this group of folks, it really helps us in influencing the kinds of things that go on there, and brings kind of awareness of the importance of our watershed to everybody, and makes them understand that. So I see this as being a great document to get us going and establishing those relationships and really working to protect our watershed.
Thank you, Colin. Okay, questions, Councillor Lachtenberg, then Councillor Charwood, you're next, and then Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward.
Thanks, Colin. I appreciated the report, and I do have other questions, and I'll hopefully try to rifle through them pretty quickly. The first is a couple of sort of housekeeping questions. The main recommendation, as I'm understanding it, is setting up or one of the main recommendations, setting up a technical committee. And in that technical committee, you've identified, or Dobson, I guess, has identified, I'm not sure who has identified a few people who should be sitting on that committee. One of the things I noticed, and I'd like to get your take on it, is the lack of somebody with an ecologist, like a forest ecologist. I recognize that you've got the forestry people there, the recreation people there, but I'm looking for somebody who's got a longer term view and will think about some of the impacts that are probably not visible to people who care very much about the forest and our water quality, but don't have that integrated, holistic 20-30 year view. So first on that one, do you see a role for that, and should we sort of make a recommendation or update this recommendation to include that role?
I think Councillor Lundberg, that having folks that are definitely not only aware of, but are quite interested in the ecology is very important. I think it was the intention with the technical committee being assembled and having the folks from the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources involved with it, was to bring that piece of things to the technical group. And so I do think that those things were considered in this evaluation, as opposed to just looking at it from a logging sort of standpoint. But yes, I do think that those are very important and goes to the greater health of the whole watershed.
And I think just to, these are recommendations. It doesn't mean that you do A, B, C, and D exactly how that recommendation is. It's not that set in stone. So if there's more people that need to be at the table, it doesn't mean you only can have these people. They're just identifying the folks that. So those are good suggestions, and I think you can still adopt this and expand the committee to have the right people at the table. I don't think you have to change get our consultant to change the recommendation to cost us a bunch of money for.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I can either wait or supplemental.
Go ahead.
Your call. I was just calling a question about the bacteriological contamination, primarily from the human presence along the streams, and it was rated as moderate to high, but then I was noticing that we didn't sort of revisit that in the report as well. Unfortunately, my notes have all they're lost in the app, so I'm going off of memory here. But they didn't appear back in the app, and I'm interested in hearing what our experience is. Certainly in the 5 Mile Basin, we've identified backcountry skiing as probably the primary source of potential contamination. Do we have any motorized transportation in the 5 Mile Basin at all? I'm thinking of sleds in particular.
Councillor Lockenberg, I don't believe so, because the access is restricted into there. There is the road access that we have, which is gated, allows us to get up into where the intake is, but that's not supposed to be an area with that kind of activity going on in it.
So no motorized. Okay, I wondered about that. I can hold my last couple questions.
And I think the human activity that you're concerned about in the stream is probably human waste activity. You don't want in your water stream.
Okay. It's not erosion caused by, Okay, great. Thanks.
You okay now, Rick? Okay, Nicole.
Thanks, Mayor. So I noticed in the report that there's lots of mention of, what are they calling it, forest degradation and a monitoring of forest degradation, but I don't see anything in the recommendations. And this maybe goes to Councillor Lochtenberg's point. If we're going to approve this, what opportunities do we have to add recommendations, for example? So one of those that I would want to see is an acknowledgement that forest degradation is present and due to probably historic logging and other reasons. Why is one of the recommendations not listed for forest rehabilitation?
There was, Councillor Charwood, one of the findings in the report was that there's a forest health report or study that's done annually by BC Parks. And one of the things that the report's really looking for is for them to be sharing that information with the city, and so we can have a greater sense of that. I think that's quite important. From what I recall, up in the 5 Mile Basin, a lot of the issues that are related to old fires and how that can have an influence on the amount of sediment that's produced. And then of course with the beetle issue that we have also in the local vicinity here, the forest health is quite important. Through this, they were looking for us to be getting that through BC Parks, because I guess they do that on an annual basis, and for us to be establishing doing this exercise with them on an annual basis, and so we're being updated on those kinds of things.
So Colin, I think just for a bit of clarity, it's important to keep in mind that particular basin you're talking about is park, Class A park on one side, Anderson Creek Timber on the other side.
Yeah.
And below that, then you have private lands again of up around Mountain Station and right around to Sabota Road down to Selkirk College. So we're dependent on the goodwill of a number of various players along there to be part of this conversation.
Yeah. So we're not the regulator in any of these lands, right? We're the influencer. And you certainly can lobby government, you know. So I think that's part of the, you know, the why the report's there of what we need to ask, whether it's government or our partners, or, you know, it's obviously super important to our community, these watersheds.
Yeah, so if I could just do my follow-up question, and it again hinges off of what Councillor Lochtenberg said around the committee and who's present on that committee. And I, for example, have a hydrologist looking at this report. Right now, there are local scientists who have been studying this area for a long time. And in my watershed protection work, one of the things that I'm hearing constantly is we need to be measuring quantity, quality, but we also need to be tracking flow. And it looks like that is set up for Anderson Creek, and I would hope to see that being measured across all of the intakes. That is something that would give us a full picture of the health of the source, which is the whole point of this report. So I would like to see that flow piece come up in recommendations too a little more clearly, because over and over again it's commented on quantity and quality. I really think all three of those things need to be stated together to get a full picture.
Yeah, I agree, Councillor Charlwood. The 5 Mile source formerly had a station on it that was actually discontinued. I think it was in 2015, if I remember correctly, which is really quite disappointing. It had 30 years of good data, so I mean, at least we've got that to go with. But it really struck me as being a real miss on having that station get pulled, being that it's such an important water source for the city of Nelson. So yeah, I personally would also like to see that restored. It's being able to view and see what's going on in Anderson is good, but it would be really great to be able to see that on 5 Mile, being that it's our major source.
And have you I think it's through Living Lakes, the data hub, all the watershed data collection that's happening in our region with Selkirk College. Has that been tapped into in terms of best practices for data collection?
No, I don't believe so, Councillor Charlwood. I'd be quite interested in that, though. If there's some information you could pass on to me, I'd be really quite interested in that.
I'll connect with you on that. Thanks, Colin.
And Colin, I thought we talked about.
Kevin, just a moment. Nicole, if you have, if you're, you know, like you mentioned, you had hydrologists looking at that report. I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind that what we're doing needs to be filtered through our city manager, so that we're not sort of double booking these folks to do analysis of reports that we have. So, and that's for all of council. It's important that we you know, we work through our own departments to make sure if there's a gap that we're filling them here at City Hall and they're not being filled by myself or yourself outside of our parameters. So,
may I respond to that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. When I say I'm having, this is a friend and somebody who has expertise who I've worked with in watershed protection for a while, who simply offered to support me in reviewing a fairly hefty document that wanted full approval within a few days. So that was me getting support rather than asking them to work on behalf of the city.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I misunderstood you. I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Colin, I thought we talked about, you know, if the province wasn't going to restore that we would look at installing our own measuring station or on 5 Mile.
Well, we could certainly do that. I know there's a cost to getting all that equipment and put things into place. I could find out what it would cost us to bring that back online.
Yeah, you know, I think we want to lobby the provincial government, but I think it is, you know, 90% of our water, so it's super important to us. And if they're not willing to do it, I think it might be something council would want to support, that we have good data.
Okay, next on the list, Rick, you're back up again. I think.
Am I next?
No, you already had a kick of this cat, didn't you?
I did. I have a second,
Okay.
but if somebody else is to go first, that would be fine.
Okay, well, Keith and Jesse, I thought you had a couple of things. So
Yeah, I think it was me and then just.
yeah, let's go around the horn here, Keith, and then Jesse, and then go back to you, Rick. Okay.
Two questions, and we had touched on the biological risks from unauthorized camping, but I was wondering, seeing that piece, how we are making distinctions, if at all, between recreational camping and, I guess, housing as a last resort. Like, are we dealing with people who are living up there for prolonged periods of time, like we have other encampments around the city, or is this purely people who are coming in, recreating, and then leaving again, you know, spending some days out in the bush? So I'm wondering how we're identifying that when we say we're going to address the problem. I wonder what consideration was there, and then I have a supplemental.
Sure, Councillor Page, I hadn't understood it as being kind of like a semi-permanent encampment. My understanding through reading the report that it was folks that were engaged in camping. However, I think it was in the Selous watershed in the upper part. There was an old cabin that was identified way up in the watershed. So I would hazard to guess that whoever is making use of that is probably there, you know, more frequently than just periodic camping.
Okay. And then we talked about it a little bit, and I haven't seen the conversation blossom, and maybe it'll come out on Nelson next, but this piece really does strike me as one of those areas we want to start to incorporate into our asset management planning and try and find comparables to other pieces of infrastructure management that we keep track of, so that we can, you know, if we're going to throw a water filtration station down at the intake by the airport, that's quite a cost. And how do we make comparisons of how valuable this is, so inform decisions if we start to see encroaching risks on it that may make us act older than we might be without that data? Like, how can we really grapple with natural asset planning and start to report out what these functions are to our city? Because we're not a city without this water source.
That is a very good point, Councillor Page. As far as putting a dollar value on it, I mean, I think that it's kind of priceless to us, and that it's so important for life and the existence of our city. However, I realize from an asset management point of view that my number is probably considered inflated. That might be something that us finding somebody who's got some experience in actually assigning those values to natural assets. I think that there'd be some good input. You know, I can take a look at old pipes in the ground and concrete and kind of assign an asset value to that, but I've never done that with a creek before. And so I think that in order to be able to do something that would be defensible, we'd want to maybe engage somebody that does that and has more background and experience in doing so, just because I'd want to make sure that we were putting forward something that was defensible.
I think it was it Nanaimo that I forwarded you has just done something around that?
I think that's correct, Kevin. I seem to remember it was Nanaimo.
And also Gibson's did a lot of natural assets work for their watershed.
Yeah.
I posted something in the chat. They're calling for you.
Oh. Nice. Okay, Jesse?
Yeah, I think we're, you know, we are fortunate that our main water system's in, you know, a Class A wilderness park. You know, they're, you know, that's a big bonus for us.
We're actually fortunate that they're willing to do some work in that park to make sure our water system survives. And that tour that I took a few weeks ago with the fire chief, and Colin, I'm sure you were up through Sabota and up into that area at some point. Without the work of BC Parks, we'd have a real threat on our hands up there because of the beetle kill that's happening in the park. And on that note, it's really worth having this conversation. I don't know who the cycling club represents, but the amount of mountain bike trails going through that area is absolutely staggering. And, you know, there's very few things in our community that you can do without asking somebody for permission, but it just seems to me if you have a mountain bike and a chainsaw and a hatchet, you can pretty well build a trail anywhere you want. And I'm not so sure that's a good thing. You know, we had people cycling by us in the park while we were having that tour, and they're not even supposed to be in the park. You know, it's just and we really need to have that conversation with the mountain biking community. It's not to stop access, but to where the access is, and the types of trails that are being cut, and the amount of erosion that's happening is absolutely staggering, just through mountain biking alone. Okay.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to say was I really appreciated the weight that climate change was given in this report. I feel like, you know, it's the challenge with climate change is it's the impacts are huge, but they're over a long haul, like a long period of time. But if we don't prepare now, we're going to get caught later. So I just really I really appreciated that in the agenda package intro. You know, you really was heavily influenced by what climate change is, what's going to happen, how can we prepare for it, wildfire, the drawing out of the landscape, all these things. So thank you. It's really valuable. I guess my one query is sort of in building off the idea of asset management. Would there be value in speaking about boundary expansion, or to actually make, considering that it's 5 Mile Creek is 90% of our water, as Kevin said. Is that right, Kevin? Yeah. So, my worry is, as climate change settles in and becomes more and more apparent and more damaging, what are we willing to do as a city to protect our water source? I think the Gibsons has been doing some interesting work around natural asset valuing. Boundary expansion is an interesting way to look at getting some control. But I think what worries me is what happened at Cottonwood Lake, where the RD kind of left. They kind of were hoping for the good graces of what was around it, and that didn't happen. And they were caught kind of, in a place that wasn't a great place to be caught in. And especially having invested all that work and energy and time and money into Cottonwood Lake Park, and then to have it so threatened. So my concern is that are we relying too much on good graces of other organizations, or do we need to be more aggressive about securing our water source?
Well, that's a big, huge question, Councillor Woodward. I'll try to give it an answer here. I really do think that it's worth a while to promote and to really make sure that everybody is aware of the interest that the city does have in this and how important it is. Now, whether doing that through achieving, the ownership or control of that area, I can't really comment on that. I think that'd be something we'd have to really study to see whether there was more value in that. However, I do think that what this is indicating here in this report is by engaging this group of people, and that by making sure that they're aware of how important this is to the city. That's going to really allow us to make sure that we get our message out and that we are being considered when decisions are being made about what kind of logging is being done, what kind of fire mitigation work is being done, and that it's always the city stays as kind of a present. The importance of this to us remains kind of in the forefront to other decision makers. So I can't say whether it would be in our best interest to pursue something else, but I know definitely in the short term, us making sure that we're engaging this group of people to get our message out to them is certainly a value.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page. Councillor Lachtenberg.
Yeah, a few things were mentioned there, so I don't want to kick it around too much longer. It's a great report, heavily detailed. I really appreciate the amount of effort and work that went into it. I did want to come back to a comment about the work that the cycling clubs are doing, which is being, there's an agreement, I believe, in place with the RDCK. I can't remember the bodies, but they are working on maintaining existing trails. They aren't really expanding out, and that stuff is being tracked, I believe, within the parks side of things with the RDCK. Like that work has been, there's discussion that has been having there, and stuff has been tracked inside the GIS system. So I think we're getting a better handle on accountability of what work is going on, and that we do have a very competent and organized group that we're bound to for that kind of work. So I'm not so worried. But second thing that I just want to make sure we return to, and I'm not sure if we need to amend the motion or if we could just leave it with staff, but we've talked about the natural asset piece. We've talked about bringing that onto the books. And I don't want to lose that as an action item that I think it opens up how we're going to do that for all of the natural assets that are currently off the books. Like, we know they're there, we know they're important. Just Woodward was speaking to, maybe we need to be bolder and take more action. And I think once we know what the number looks like, or start to get a sense over a course of time of what the number looks like, that might, make it obvious that we need to take bolder action, or at least make sure we have contractual obligations with our partners to ensure that we get the same end result. But I think it's an important piece I've been harping on for 2 years now, that we need to find a way to account for these things. We need to put a number on them. We need to understand what their value is to us, and we need to be able to report that in a consistent way within our annual reporting. So how do we do that, staff?
It is in Nelson next, so it'll be one of those things that we look at. We'll just have to bring that all forward. For in terms of our watershed, I don't think we necessarily need a number on it to know that it's super important to us. That's, as Colin said, it's priceless, right? We are going to hopefully get a sense of where we are doing, the other project we're doing is secondary source, and looking at, the Clearwater Basin, what the cost to develop another source of water is, would be the value of this source of water. You'd have to replace it. We've done work on, pumping out at Kootenay Lake, so we know what that number is. I think we have that in the water master plan as far as, the alternatives. So I assume that's how you would value it. As you didn't have this one, you would have to develop a different one. And what's the cost of developing it? What's the risk of getting those approvals, etc.? I think Kootenay Lake is doable. I don't know how you value the quality of water. That's why we're sticking with the mountain water source, because the quality of water is quite a bit better than Kootenay Lake. We don't have pumping costs and all those sorts of things. So, I think all those factors, but I think the water master plan probably would give you a pretty good idea of what the alternative is if we lost 5 Mile.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well,
did I see your hand up?
Yeah. There's a couple things that to build on the M&A, the natural asset component. SWIP 3 and the Insurance Bureau of Canada joined with MNAI, which is the link I shared, to talk about insurance products for local governments around their climate adaptation risks, with the idea of valuing your natural assets and what they should be priced at. So there's some strong, I would say, really strong movement in the insurance industry that we're going to have to get on this. And as a further encouragement, so maybe that's the stick. The carrot is that MNAI and a few others have been, and we may be too late on this, but they have been offering really low cost, almost pilot programs to come in and do a natural asset valuation that you would need in order to get these insurance products down the line, or to get grants that might come to do some of the work that we might want to do on wildfire mitigation or what have you. So I'd really strongly stress that we do talk to the M&AI guys, and that link there in the chat will be helpful there. And I did have, Colin, one question related to This line in page, no, it's actually only on page 9. Just a clarification. It stood out, and I was worried that it was kind of reflective in the tenor of the whole report. It didn't seem to be, but maybe you can clarify. So in 2.4 there, it talks about the fact that there's the anthropogenic impacts. There's very little anthropogenic disturbance in, I'm assuming 5 Mile, but also Selous and Anderson. And yet we've just been talking about actually significant anthropogenic disturbance from the clear cut below 5 Mile near the intake, all the mountain biking trails and the hiking trails in Anderson and Selous. What does that mean, that there's very little anthropogenic disturbance when clearly there is? I was confused by that.
Well, Councillor, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Councillor Lotberg, I think what they were getting at in 2.4 is that that they were I think what they were trying to get across is that they feel that the disturbances in the forest cover and kind of our greatest risk that we have for the impact on the water is due to forest health and or wildfire issues, as opposed to kind of, I guess, direct human activity in the watershed. And again, as I said earlier, I mean, obviously climate change and these things, saying that there isn't direct human activity and that would be erroneous. But I think what they were trying to get across was it was, as opposed to boots on the ground, that it was due to things that obviously are exacerbated by human activity.
Right. So second order wasn't being counted. I was talking about first order effects, not second order. Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, back to the recommendation then. Before us, we have a mover and a seconder for that. I'm going to call the question, and there's been a lot of conversation, Colin. I'm sure you've been taking the odd note as we've been going forward. I know that Sarah has captured a few of the ideas. If council have other ones they want to throw at Colin, you're more than welcome to do so. In the meantime, it's a good start, Colin. We haven't had this type of report in the past, and it's a great stepping stone for us going forward. So thank you for that. And I'd like to call the question on the motion, which is that the recommendation presented in 5 Mile and Anderson Creek and Selous Creek source protection be approved, and a copy of the plan be provided to Interior Health Authority Specialist Environmental Health Officer. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next is video camera
Thank you,
use
Colin.
policy. Are you sticking around for this one too, Colin?
If Sarah would like me to, I can certainly stick around.
No, just checking.
It's up to you, Colin.
Up to you, Colin.
No, it's probably a good idea.
Okay,
Colin, it's probably a good idea.
Sure.
We do have.
When I read through that, there's this is to do with security and protection of facilities and so forth as well. So
yeah.
The City of Nelson recognizes the needs to balance the individual rights and privacy and needs to ensure safety and security of city employees, customers, and public property. Proper video surveillance where deemed necessary is one of the most efficient means of helping to keep city facilities, properties operating safely and securely. And there's a full report here again, folks, and thanks for that. And there's also a recommendation. And there's options and alternatives available to council that wish to put them forward. So right now we're looking at if somebody's willing to move the recommendation forward. I'd like Councillor Morrison, hand up. Councillor Renwick, seconder. Thank you very much. All right, questions or comments from the mover and seconder, and then we'll open it up to the floor if there's anybody else who wants to. Councillor Morrison, are you okay? Councillor Renwick? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just a comment that this makes a lot of sense to me. I think that it answered some questions that some people may have about personal security and what have you, but with proper placement and what have you. And the idea is we're not out there just shooting the general public. We're putting it in strategic places for specific reasons. And the fact that you know, it is, there's some oversight there by the province. I think this is a good policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Fairness, administrative fairness policy. Staff are presented with a amended administrative fairness policy to council. Council is now requested to adopt the amended policy for the reasons explained below. And there's a number of reasons explained, and there is a recommendation. And once again, there's a pretty clear, in my opinion, staff report. And it's open for discussion if somebody wants to move the recommendation or something opposite of that. Councillor Woodward moving, second by Councillor Lochtenberg. Either one of you wish to speak? Councillor Page.
Yeah, so we've got two big policies, kind of blaze past the last one, so I'll get my kicks in over here. There's two things I wanted to pull out of here. The last time we did this was about 20 years ago, previous councils obviously. So this will probably stand for another 2 decades. One of them is under procedural 2. I think we want to amend this to change the 30 days to 12 months. The bylaw, that section talks about how much time you actually have to file a complaint. And I think with many things, unless it kind of mentions in there, if another bylaw or policy sets a different number that's more appropriate for a particular area or department, then that's overridden, but the default would be 30 days. And I thought the 30 days was quite a tight time to both have a decision manifest in the world and maybe generate a complaint of some sort. And especially when, you know, you have the back and forth with staff and you're waiting for replies, it seemed like 30 days was far too tight if someone actually wanted to bring a complaint to deal with an administrative fairness issue. So that's the first thing. And I would propose we amend that to 12 months, but I'm sure there's probably some middle ground there that it's haggled over.
Yeah. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I think we're, you know, trying to find that balance that, you know, a complaint 12 months later, we might have built the thing by that time or you know, taken some action. Like we can't sit in limbo for 12 months of
Kevin, I think you touched on it there. Once we've taken action, it makes it very difficult for staff to backpedal or change a decision. And so it certainly would then come to council as a request for a staff decision to change. 30 days, it maybe seem quick, but when you look at the process, it's so from the time of the complaint or the issue until when they file a complaint and start the process, sort of trigger the administrative fairness process with the initial staff person. The whole process can take quite a long time.
Yeah. So I hear that, and obviously I deal with complaints, not certainly on the scale of what you guys deal with at times, but I think I think it's a bit of a false premise to think that the only solution to the rectification of a complaint is to unwind whatever the decision was. If the decision was arrived at unfairly and you ended up building the stairs or cutting the lot or putting the plumbing in, those ships have sailed. But you know, the process that the decision was arrived at, the people that were notified of the decision, the procedures that go out into this decision, I think all of that still ends up being fair resolution to the complaint in the first place. And if it's simply like, well, we've already done it, so you know you can't take this complaint any further because your 30 days have expired, I think we want to open that window larger, and I don't think we want to just assume that the only way to resolve such a complaint is simply to not have the decision happen. I think we need to still deal with whatever might have been unfair.
And I think that's in there, you know, we're trying to resolve things. That's why we have this process. You start with the, you know, initial staff, goes to their manager, unsatisfied, it comes to me, and ultimately if still unsatisfied by the person, then it goes to council. And I think what we're saying there is you know, it's sometimes it's, you know, no, you know, you can't do that under our bylaw. No, our bylaw actually says that we can put that on your taxes. You know, obviously that one they can appeal to council, and council can waive, you know, the 30 days if they choose at the end of the day. And, you know, if it came to me a bit late, it's not like none of these things stand up if you're not reasonable, right? If there's a legitimate reason why you didn't bring it within that time frame, then, you know, this isn't like cut and dry that, you know, sorry you missed your 30 days, we're not going to deal with it at all, and we could, right? You know, our goal is to resolve these things, and hopefully they don't end up at your table. So I wouldn't get, I think the 30 days is hoping, you know, that we do these things timely. It's as much on our side as their side, right?
And I think we are very good at resolving issues before they reach this stage. We rarely,
yeah, before they even get to my desk.
Absolutely, yeah. We rarely have a situation that we can't resolve amongst staff and whoever the issue is with. So yeah, again, it's for timely reasons, and there is definitely flexibility there.
Yeah, I think Kevin and Sarah hit the nail on the head there on the 30 days. I like the 30 days because it puts us under the gun to do something, in that it's not about squeezing the person on the other end. It's about squeezing us to deal with the issue, and we still have the flexibility to go beyond that timeline. But if somebody had a complaint,
that's not what the wording says.
Okay,
like,
so what?
I'm sorry, but it says the complainant seeking review of a staff's decision must be initiated within the time period specified in the applicable bylaw or other enactment, or otherwise within 30 days. So it's not about our response. This is very much like if you have a complaint, you have 30 days from the point the decision was made. So from tonight, you have until the 11th of June to notice the problem and make a complaint. Otherwise, you could potentially be just filtered out at the staff level.
But remember, this is a complaint on a staff decision, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is, staff has made the decision. You know, no, you can't, you know, put up that tree there.
Yeah, I'm just saying we're talking about turnaround time, and this wording is about how long anyone has to actually make a complaint to the city about it, an unfair decision. So
right, but it's not like you don't know the decision's made. It's not like you notice something, you know, 2 weeks later. You know, we've made a decision. No, we're not going to allow that, or no, that doesn't fit with our bylaw, or whatever. That's what this process is someone deciding, no, I'm not happy with that decision, and I'm not hung up about, you know, changing those timelines, but the longer you stretch it, then, you know, who made that decision? Why did we make that? All those things.
Yeah, I know.
It's not like it.
Do it daily. I get it.
Yeah, it's not like it's discovered, and this isn't like a warranty on your work. This is actually, we make a decision based on our policies, which are council's policies.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. I just want to say, I actually, the 30 days, in my opinion, is keeping the issue fresh and dealt with, rather than having it stretch out, somebody coming in 60 days or 90 days and saying, I don't appreciate, or I don't like the decision you made 3 months ago. As Kevin was saying, I think that within 30 days, it's a fresh decision. The person has time to mull over, okay, am I going to complain or not? Or am I going to confront this issue or not? There's a bit of time there. And then the staff is, the decision is fresh with staff, and then the issue can be dealt with. So I'm personally, and I think 30 days is a good section of time, in my opinion.
And maybe we could add something like, you know, extensions of time won't be unreasonably withheld, or something to that effect. Would that help?
Well,
like, we're not.
Kevin,
Like if there's a legitimate reason why, they had to gather other information or whatever, it's not like we're gonna say sorry.
Yeah.
Well, this is in the section called refusal to review a decision.
Yeah.
Like it's,
So I don't mind.
It's very
I
explicit.
don't mind adding something like that. Legitimate requests for extension of time wouldn't be unreasonably denied or something like that, if that helps.
Well, it's definitely better.
okay. So just
Yeah,
a
12
second.
months.
So
Yeah.
we have a motion on the floor, Kevin.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor, so we have two options here, and that's to add a friendly amendment if it's friendly, or not, or vote on the motion that's on the floor. So I'll call.
So I would move to amend section 2 of the procedure, refusal to review decision, to add in language communicating that extensions will be provided if reasonably supported.
Yeah, I think we tend to use won't be unreasonably denied or something language similar to that. We have that in quite a few of our collective agreements.
As long as it doesn't lead to a slippery slope, right? Like I've always found when you have your rules, if your rules are settled,
Hold on, just a
then
second.
people.
Jesse, just a moment, please.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
You can second the amendment.
we're talking about an amendment here now. So you're moving that as amendment, so you need a seconder for that. And you don't have one, so we're back to the main motion. Questions or comments on the main motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. All right. Next is minutes, information, and reports. Accounts payable list, building permits, stats, first quarter purchasing. Rusty Moose is gone. Anybody want to move? Councillor Page, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull out. I just want to see where we're at with an item for the library. Council had previously moved earlier this
Hold on a
year.
sec. Are you in the first?
Are we not in reports?
We're on minutes of the
Oh.
yeah, so we can go through, we can move on there in a sec. Move receipt of the minutes, please, somebody. And then we'll move to reports. Councillor Renwick, Councillor Lochtenberg, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we're on to reports. You're up.
Well, it was about the library minutes, so we'll just carry on from there. Council will remember that we passed a resolution aligning with work at the Nelson Library Board to have a workshop around the stakeholders that might be participating in the housing development should it go forward on the library building. And I'm just wondering, we've had some emails back and forth with the mayor and just wondering where we're at with a date. The board is still waiting for a response from the city and a date when we would be doing that.
There's a resolution by council to
Yeah,
have
there
a
is.
committee to look at housing.
Not a committee, a working group discussion about what the consultation will be to figure out what the community wants around housing. That was in January, I believe. We passed that resolution, and there's some emails back and forth with the chairs, between the chairs, that can go ahead, but I don't think we've scheduled any dates, and it's getting quite long in the tooth at this point.
Yeah, we don't know where that grant application's at, and like we don't have capacity at this stage to, kind of like it's speculative at this stage whether we get the grant, then I would say do that work. But right now, I just don't see having a staff member, work on a project that's speculative at this stage.
So maybe you could describe to me what you think the project is.
Well, we had
A community consultation process.
Presentation from Matthew, right? With those were concepts, and we applied for a grant. Kevin.
Yeah.
So what you're saying,
Yep.
Keith, is you're talking about having a further discussion about what this kind of looks like. Should we be successful in getting the grant? Is that what you're?
the library board had passed a motion to have a discussion about what stakeholders were being brought to the table and being serviced by that potential housing development and what that public engagement process looked like. So it was less of, hey, we should put these people in, but more of how are we going to reach out to the community? How is the community going to have a discussion that surrounds this project? Since this project is really tied to the library, how do we make sure that all of the appropriate stakeholders and Indigenous voices and vulnerable population voices and seniors' voices are being heard in an authentic way that people are not surprised by what happens there in the end. That was the intent of the library. And then at our table, we passed a motion that we would indeed have a workshop with them to figure out how we will make those decisions and what values need to be embedded in those decisions. And so we're still waiting. We still haven't really made a connection or a commitment as to when we would have that work done.
Yeah, I don't know if council's really looked at, is this market housing or something else? Yeah, I don't, again, I would say we don't have staff to go do a large public consultation on that. I think council needs to decide. First of all, we need to know whether we get a grant or not. And second of all, because we put that grant in as a standalone library and housing as ideal to add that housing, but I don't know who would fund that housing. I think there's a lot of balls in the air before we go to the community and have a public consultation process. I think council needs to decide where they want this project, and are you looking at making money off the condo development and using that to fund your share of the library? Are you looking for grants? If it's going to be more affordable housing, etc., then you're looking for grants. I don't, council certainly hasn't talked about whether.
And again, it's not that the library is asking us to go to the public. It's that the library is asking us board to board to have a workshop, to have a discussion about how we would do such an engagement and how we would ensure that the engagement met the values of our community, so that when we do get the grant, we're not just suddenly running towards building something without an idea of what we would be doing in the process. So
I'd suggest council have that conversation and figure out before you meet with the library board about what that looks like. There's.
Hang on a second, Kevin.
Based on the.
Kevin, hold on, please.
Yeah.
Keith, and I'm sorry, I don't remember everything that happens around here, but are you saying the library board passed that resolution or the council passed that resolution?
We've both passed. It's been passed at both tables at this point.
Okay, we're trying.
I'm seeing everyone seems to have forgotten. I've seen all the furrowed eyes.
I don't think council spent the time to. I think you guys need to really spend some time and decide where you're. If we get this grant, how important housing is. Is it something you're looking to help fund the library? Is it something you're going to go after grants from BC Housing? How does that tie in the thing? I just think council needs some work before you start talking about the consultation. You do have an OCP. You did pass the zoning, so those are your policy documents, but again, they're broad, so you certainly could talk about that. But if you want to schedule a workshop within council so that we have a sense, I just hate to go into another organization and council's not really clear where you want to be, and you waste a bunch of people's time because you guys haven't really had that discussion.
Because we were talking about, we have a property that will accommodate at least 4 floors of something. And if we want to just build a library, we're talking about probably 1 floor, maybe 2.
Two.
Yeah, exactly. So that's based on that concept that was brought to us.
Mm-hmm.
So why would we throw away 3 possible floors of subsidy to build that library as an example, right?
Well, nobody's saying to do that.
Yeah.
No one's saying throw away that housing or that housing isn't market housing. What's being said is that this building, through its strategic planning of the library, has come forward. It's coming into manifestation. The community is going to associate the library and the organization with what goes on there. The public's going to want to have some say on what that housing is used for and who is served by that housing and who has access to that housing. And how do we design a public engagement process that does that meets the library standards for public consultation, and how do we have that conversation board to board with those stakeholders? And that is the motion we passed in January, and that's the motion the library passed previous to that. So the chair's been knocking at our door for a date, and that's been said, but the date is not manifesting. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Jesse, go ahead.
I would, thank you. I would just say, I think we just need to wait to see if we get the grant, because there's no use in doing the work, the planning work, if we don't get the grant. So wouldn't the linchpin here be the grant and then the work?
Yeah, there's no project if we don't get the library grant, and the housing really depends on, if it's not market housing, it depends on, can you get a grant for housing, right?
I mean, there could be all kinds of.
Somebody has a magic bullet to find $14 million to build a library, or maybe more. We're going to need to do something on top of that building somehow.
I would just say, I would just say, like, as often said at council, like putting the cart before the horse, like it would seem that we would just, the linchpin would be, did we get the money? And if we got the money, then all the community consultation, then all the planning would happen. Because otherwise you're making work, you're putting work into groups and people, and then it comes to nothing because we didn't get the grant.
Yeah, you would do that.
Right?
That's a process you would use, Keith, if you were going to go to referendum for, say, a number to build a new library complex or something like that. You'd do that kind of work then. But if you're depending on a grant to get you off the ground, and potentially depending on some other proponent, regardless of whether it's market or subsidized or whatever, housing to help build the building in the first place, you're probably not going to get a library, I'll tell you right now, because you're staring down the barrel of probably 15 or 20 million bucks just for the library alone.
Which seems doable, and I actually think the cart before the horse is to wait until you've got a grant in hand, and then you're rushing to try and meet a grant deadline to see what the community in fact wants to have you do with the grant funding. Like, the grant will come through and we'll do the library. We're talking about what we do on top to subsidize that, and who has access, and how is that stakeholder engagement going to be done? How are we going to talk to our community to ask them what they want us to do so we can weigh out our decision, versus pre-deciding what we want to do and then going out to the public and saying, hey, we had this great idea, is it a yay or nay? Because I think that's what we have been doing, and I think public engagement needs to be started now, and we need to talk to the main tenant of this building, which is going to be the public library. And I think we're robbing ourselves of some really great discussion with our trustees over there.
Personally, I think they're overstepping a bit. They're not involved in any of that and funding any of this. I get they're in the building, but they're in a building with police right now, and I don't know if they tell the police how to police.
Someone want
there's not great people
in the motion, because I guess that's kind of where we're at. Is we have a motion on both tables that we've already passed. We're just not scheduling a date for it. So is someone going to put a motion to rescind the original motion?
Yeah, we'll have to. Keith, we're not trying to dodge this bullet by any means, and I'd be more than happy to sit down with the library board myself or with council, and be happy to do that. But Sarah's trying to find the motion, and she's going to need a bit more time to dig it up here. She's frantically trying to find. Sorry,
Sarah. I thought it'd be a simple, like, let's do it by August, or let's do it by July. Or,
Keith, it would be really helpful if in the future you just gave us a call ahead of time, and then gave us a chance to find it, dig it up, and
Sure.
figure out where we've dropped the ball, if we have. Okay?
Sure, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, all I can say is our development service staff are flat out, as is there. Everyone is way over capacity.
Kevin, let's
And
leave that with
we-
Sarah for a day or two, and we'll dig this all up and we'll get to the bottom
Okay.
of it, and we'll talk with Tracy and the board there, and try and put everybody's mind at ease here that the bottom line is it'd be absolutely fantastic if we can get a new library and that, but I think we're going to have to be innovative in how we make that happen. Otherwise, it probably won't, unless council has an appetite in this environment we're in to borrow $20 million for a single-use facility, a library. So.
Yeah, we have funding to fund our share of the library building. It's just the housing that's, and again, you're gonna have to decide if you're gonna try to get a net zero building or mass timber or all those things. That's premium here. So there's gonna be some trade-offs of that. So I think, you guys, council having that discussion where your priorities are will certainly help kind of shape that as before you go to community and ask them and then go, well, that's just not even viable. If, might be the case, right? It's not going to be an inexpensive building. But there might be some good BC housing grants.
We're actually, we're going to start seeing some checks and balances here in the next little while. And anybody that's been paying attention to the price of steel and copper and lead and zinc and wood and any other commodity you think of, like we're talking about 40% increases, and nobody's talking about inflation, but pretty soon they're going to be. And massive debt loads by governments, etc. We need to be very guarded going forward. And I just talked to Kevin today. Even the pier project, I have no idea what that's costing right now, to be honest with you. And anything we discussed probably 3-4 months ago is 20, maybe 30% more, including wrapping the Civic Center in cotton wool.
I'm really surprised we're talking about housing being a poor investment in the city of Nelson. Like it's something that wouldn't pay for itself.
If you have market people are willing to pay for it, then it's not.
Well, it could be rental tenure too, and you could still make your cost per square foot.
But
the city is traditionally not.
Kevin, just a moment. I think it's really important that each one of us take a moment and go find out how much a sheet of plywood's costing today compared to what it cost 6 months ago. And it's a different ball game out there right now. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have been living the housing inflation problem for the better part of 2 decades. So we know what inflation looks like. I know what inflation looks like. Can't remember a time we haven't lived with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy out there.
I mean, the inflation in the last year is something we haven't seen probably since the 70s in certain areas.
And it's with COVID and everything else, it's not even being talked about, but it's a serious issue for us going forward as stewards of the city. So.
Can I ask the chair? Could we come back on to topic, please?
Well, I think we are on topic, Janice. We're talking about the topic is do we want to meet with the library board and talk about developing a concept for the library, and I think everything's probably going to have to be on the table as to how we're going to get there, because the last presentation we had from Matthew Stanley was a significant budget item that needed to be funded by grants and some other sources, and one of those sources was some form of housing, and so far we have none of that in place, and without having some assurance that we were going to get a grant, there's no point in even looking at it unless council's willing to go to a referendum to borrow the money to build it. And then you're talking about a serious community consultation process, and you're talking about having a conversation with your next door neighbor partners that are minor funders of the library as it currently is, and going forward that contribution would need to be significant more to build a new facility. And we'd be talking.
I don't agree with you, Mr. Mayor. It's just that Keith asked a question about some things that have been passed, and we've asked that staff will look them up and be able to report out on them. And yes, this discussion has to be had at some time. I don't think tonight's the night, because we're trying to figure out whether or not we actually agreed that we would meet with the library to talk in some esoteric form about what a development might look like. I think we're diving a little bit deeper than we need to go right now for this evening. That's my point here.
Fair enough. Okay, we're going to find out what was said and what wasn't said and have that conversation going forward. Thank you. Anything else on those reports? No? Okay.
I'm parking the rest of my questions.
Okay. Late items, there are none. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg, second by Councillor Page. All in favour? Carried. I'm not sure what happened to Nicole. She's there. She's there. Okay.
I'm here. It's really weird. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, we can't. For some reason, we can't see you. I don't know what the heck. Oh, well.
Yeah, your video's not up.
Okay. Well, thanks.
There's a little
everybody.
exclamation mark on your.
Thank you very
Good night,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Kevin, Colin.